you hearing us, folks? Yes, hope you're hearing us loud and clear out there. Guys, let us know if you're hearing us loud and clear. Nice and clear. Let us know if you're reading us loud and clear. Let us know. Good to have you today. It's hot outside, folks. It's hot outside. Let me know if you're hearing me. Good afternoon, folks. Good afternoon, good afternoon. Yes, folks, and they're hearing us loud and clear. Folks, and they're hearing us loud. We're trying to just, we're not getting feedback or anything that we bring our theme song down a little bit. Yep. I'm not getting my monitors to work, but if you guys are hearing me, we're gonna forge ahead. All right, we're gonna try to rectify that. Bear with us. Bear with us, folks. All right, so we just switched mics, and I hope that helps. But I can hear myself now, so I hope that that works better. We hope that works better, folks. We're not hearing ourselves for some reason, but we want to be heard loud and clear. We trust you folks are well. Happy Saturday, folks. Happy Saturday. Good to have you, beautiful folks, with us. Happy Saturday. We trust that you guys are well. We trust that you guys are great, and the folks are telling us loud and clear. It's hot outside. We were saying that as we came on. It is hot outside, people. Where the sun come from, it is hot in the national capital city of Georgetown. It is hot. In Little Hot, it's hot. We get no warnings. We don't have any warnings. And according to weather.com, they're telling us, it's a place to go for the weather. The folks here at weather.com, they got some advice for us. And they're telling us the weather. What's the weather today? It's 31, gotta be higher than that. Oh my Lord, it's lower actually. It's 30 degrees outside. It is hot. And they're telling us there's a 9% chance it's gonna rain. It is hot, folks. It is hot. But we hope you folks are well out there, and that wherever you are, it's manageable. The weather is manageable. It's cool, maybe even that'd be our wish for you guys. It's cool weather. We came in, folks. It's blistering hot. We trust that you guys are great nonetheless. We trust that you beautiful folks are great nonetheless. And we hope that all is well at your end. We're going to have a guest dropping by today to come and help us to make some sense. Make some sense from some of the stuff we're seeing here. Try to make some sense of it, guys. So we're gonna have a guest. Economist Elson Lowe is gonna be stopping by in just a minute or two. As soon as we get all our ducks in a row, our T crossed and our I's dotted, we're gonna have the economist join us in just a bit, good people. In just a bit. In just a bit. Just making sure everything is good. We ain't want no setbacks once we start. We ain't want a setback once we get going. So good to see you folks. Share the live, smash that emoji button. We all know y'all boy run out yesterday afternoon talking a pack of nonsense. And that's the issue is going to be in our weekend review today. We won't have the time to go through more than that. That's the issue we're going to be focusing on today, good people. Yep. That quote unquote interview. Coming out of that individual. Y'all know we able. So we're making sure that we get our ducks in a row here, folks, and we're going to have our friend and brother Elson Lowe dropping by to try to make some sense. Try to make some sense of what we've been seeing or what we've been hearing. You can't pass hardship, you can't pass high cost of living. The people out there, and they know what is happening because it's their lived experience. They're living it every day. The high prices, my God. The high prices. But we're happy that you good folks are here with us, and you may hear a ringing, folks. You may hear a ringing, and we don't want to keep you guys waiting since we started a little late at our end. Oh, Father, we were fighting that sun to come true. You're going to hear a little ringing at your end, folks. 30 degrees outside, according to weather.com. They say it feels like 38. Now, this I believe. It feels goddamn like 38 degrees outside. Hot as hell. They say there's a 9% chance it's going to rain. I hope it does. Cool down this place a little. It is hot, folks, in the national capital city. Take your sunscreen, your umbrella, everything. Your whole house with you. It is hot. Stay hydrated too. Please and thank you. Folks, we don't want to waste any time at all. So you'd hear a little ringing. Apologies there. I did promise you a guest, and y'all can call me a liar. Not today. Not in this heat. We ain't having it. Not a bit of it. We're bringing in our guest virtually. You're going to hear that little ringing there. But this allows us more clarity if we do it this way. And we know you're all fast. You want to hear everything. We know you're all fast. You all want to hear everything. All right, let me take that off. You all's going to want to hear everything. How you folks doing? It's Saturday, guys. It's Saturday. We trust that you guys are great. We trust that you guys are well. Praise God. We trust that all is well with you beautiful folks out there. We trust that all is well. Good to have you folks on with us. And as I said, Elson Lowe, economist by training and profession and practice, is going to be dropping by. Yep. Looking forward to a discussion with him on all things economics. Good to have you here. Each and every one of you. How are you folks doing? Carol Rollins on this good Saturday. Maureen Coppin Williams. Good to have you here as well. Ayabo, Natasha Congreaves, and Beryl Crawford. How are you guys doing? How has Saturday been at your end thus far? Ingrid Worrell and Lyndon Gill. Lots of beautiful folks outside. Beautiful folks, but the heat. Stay cool, guys. Please and thank you. Stay cool. All right, we're going to have our brother come and join us now. Ring it again. A very good day, sir, and welcome to Below the Belt.
Hi, good to be on. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Our listeners, please let us know if you're hearing our guest. He has joined us as I promised. Are you hearing the young and brilliant Elson Lowe? Let us know that and we'll continue. We don't want a word to be wasted. Let us know if you're hearing us loud and clear. Brooklyn's in the house and Gem Salt Polydor is here with us as well. Peggy Russell Elias is here. Guys, let us know if you're hearing our brother Elson Lowe, the economist, the resident economist by practice and profession. Let us know if you're hearing him.
Yeah,
Elson,
well, like I said, always
yeah,
good to be on. Thanks for the compliments as well. Much
well
appreciated.
deserved, well deserved, well deserved. I'm trying to keep up with you these days. I always see them quoting you in the newspapers. I'm just trying to keep up.
Yeah, well, we got to deal with the issues of the day,
We
and we got to
do.
deal with as they come up.
We do. Folks, I'm privileged formally to welcome Elson Lowe to our program. As I said, Elson is a economist by training, by practice, by profession, and we are privileged to have his guidance on some issues we're going to raise today. We're gonna talk about a couple of things, and then we're going to be out of your hair so you guys can get on with the rest of your Saturday and go ahead and have a great weekend. That being said, Elson, let's start with some peripheral issues. Um, Hard times, things tight, things rough in this country, things rough. We can talk about inflation in a little bit, what I call around
Sure.
these parts Jag-Flation. We can talk about the high cost of living. We can talk about what's
Yeah.
happening with the quote unquote relief measures and those kinds of things. But things rough out there for a lot of people. What do you make of it?
Yeah, absolutely. We've really seen a difficult couple of years here in Guyana, and I think these difficulties have compounded and escalated over the past 2 years with COVID and us barely getting any kind of relief, that one measly cash grant, and then with the inflation storm that followed that and that has persisted for so much time. On the flip side, you're not seeing the government make any kind of real effort to help people. They prefer to let people punish through these difficult circumstances, and that's why things are tight. Why the street out there is so
My Lord.
tense.
Yep,
Why
yep,
they're
yep.
concerned. And on top of all of that, which is really the great irony of the whole thing, is that the country is growing at a tremendous speed, around 60% this year. In fact, with the estimates were that we are going to grow around 50% earlier in the year, but they've been increased. So the growth has accelerated. But during that same time period, you would think that you would now see some cost of living measures and so on to reflect this increased, this growing economy. But almost nothing in the supplemental budget that came up a few weeks ago. And so you've got this deep irony where, on the one hand, the economy is booming, but on the other hand, people, the actual people who are part of the economy, are in large part not benefiting at all, even while things get more and more expensive. And so rather than us seeing the country do better and things advance, we're actually seeing things slide in the opposite direction.
Wow. Former finance minister, Minister Winston Jordan, said, if Kaichur is to be quoted correctly, that what we have and what we're witnessing is the Dutch disease here with us already. Explain the concept for us, for our listeners, and tell us if you probably have the same mindset.
Yeah, so there's some elements I think he's referencing that are quite close. Essentially, Dutch disease, in broad terms, what Dutch disease is when you have a sudden commodity or a sudden industry that you start to export from. So you have a big boom in your economy. What happens is that can have a lot of negative effects on other areas in the economy. And so you end up totally dependent upon that one area and subject to the volatility that may be associated with that. In the Netherlands, I believe it was natural gas. They have a big natural gas. They export a lot of that, and if you don't monitor these things, you can see some serious issues. Of course, Dutch disease traditionally is associated with changes in your exchange rates. We've not seen that in Guyana, but we have seen some of the other side effects. We've seen a lot of focus on the oil and gas industry as opposed to other industries, and we've seen declines in agriculture, which is something that you almost always see with Dutch disease. And so the real concern here is whether the focus on the oil and gas industry has caused other industries to be neglected, whether
Mm-hmm.
in the government's mind or in the government spending. And that has now resulted in an economy that is increasingly dominated by oil, where even as we're now beginning the oil and gas industry, we're seeing about 60% of the economy by some measures, whether it's exports or so on, being oil and gas. And we only just started and it's already 60%. So that gives you an idea of the direction of travel. We must therefore be deliberate in our efforts to ensure other industries thrive, because if we don't, then we will end up totally dependent on oil.
Wow. So, you did say there some of the, while one sector goes up, some of the other sectors, invariable, they have a downward trajectory. And that is some of what perhaps former minister is referencing. We see, for instance, in the area of sugar production, we see a 4% decrease. And I think I'm quoting here, these were some first quarter numbers. 4% reduction in sugar, 20% reduction in rice production, 3.8
Yeah,
reduction in bauxite, 14.8% reduction in
yeah,
gold. So this is some of what we're seeing.
yeah,
The non-oil sector, I think is what they call it.
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. There's across a wide range of sectors you've seen these reductions, which is very alarming. Of course, some of them are due to things like the flood, but even if you did have a flood, the question is whether you could have taken more mitigation measures and so on, whether there should have been more focus on that rather than so much focus on oil and gas. And even with Gaisuko, that 4% decline, I don't think is the right way to frame it at all, because Gaisuko at the beginning of the year had cut its production target by 30%. So it was
Mm-hmm,
already starting from a far lower production
mm-hmm,
target.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And on
mm-hmm.
top of that, up until recently, Gaisuko was, I think, 50% below its reduced production target. It's a total disaster at Gaisuko. It's a total disaster. And I think sugar workers should be very concerned as to what is going on and what the future is like for them. We in the coalition here are giving serious thought to Gaisuko and to sugar and the direction of travel that that company needs to go. I've previously said that if it were up to me, I would rename Gaisuko the Guyana Oil and Gas Training Center and refocus the industry and refocus a lot of the workers. Because what is also going to happen is that as the oil and gas industry starts to raise incomes in certain parts of the economy, a lot of sugar workers will want to leave Gaisuko. And so the viability long term of the industry, I think, remains a question. Now, what that says, however, is that we need to, as much as possible, help sugar workers to transition to areas where they can make a higher wage
Mm-hmm.
and do better for themselves and their families, and not have to be worried every year whether or not Gaisuko will face pressure or close down or have to be at the behest of politicians and so on. We want to see Gaisuku workers succeed as much as they may need to succeed in industries that are growing rather than the industries of the past. And to give context as to how we must address our minds, that in only a few years, oil has come to dominate the economy, whereas sugar's been on the decline for a prolonged period of time. So these are all things to give serious thought to. But I think Gaisuka workers should rest assured that there will be concrete, large-scale plans regarding their future employment, and we're not going to be operating on the scenario where we're just going to let sugar workers go on the bread line. That's not within the realm of possibility here.
Wow, wow. I'm happy. I'm happier now that we have you here to put this issues in context for us. The folks who are listening out there, share the live for us, smash that emoji button for us as well. You all know how we do things here, so that guys get valid and credible information. Elson, you quoted a big number just now. You say the economy is slated to grow by 60% just this year. Um,
Yeah.
but that factors in the oil and gas sector as well. If we're going to be growing at that kind of exponential rate, why is it that guy needs punishing? Why we feeling wealthy? Why we pocket? still holy, and things tight,
Yeah.
and everything gone up. Why is that? Talk to us about
Well,
that.
the thing about it, man, is that what we're really seeing is a very sharp increase in the level of inequality in the country. A very sharp increase in that. Because yes, the economy is growing, but you're not seeing wages rise by the same amount. You're not seeing that big jump in wages. You're seeing the cost of housing jump because the oil and gas folks want a nice place to live, so they're paying a higher rent. They're displacing a lot of people, so you're seeing the cost of rent jump. And so, on the one hand, you have this rosy picture that on a broad scale, the macroeconomic scale, the growth scale. But in terms of people's daily lives, the inequality is getting out of hand, and people are really punishing out there. That to me is first of all, I think it's a deliberate choice by the government because if you look at their budgets, they have allotted almost nothing to cost of living mitigation. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that I think that there's a real misunderstanding of the problem by the government. I think they don't grasp the seriousness of the situation, and so they're ambling along without a care in the world.
Wow. I mean, we should be frightened. All of us should be frightened that these guys are at the wheel, because they've been that way for about 2 years now, and we don't see things looking up. I see, Elson, some forecast that tells us that things are going to be even more grave, based on a number of factors, one in which include the labor force that is needed for this new dispensation, and the fact that it cannot be found in-house. So more people might be imported, for driving up the prices out there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's expected to be it varies between 150 180,000 jobs created just by the oil and gas sector and the spin-offs that are associated with it. There's only slack labor, that is to say, unemployed people in Guyana of around about 50,000. However, what is really likely to happen is we'll have a huge importation of labor, especially skilled labor, but also unskilled. And that will mean, perhaps, if Guyanese are not trained, that a lot of the high paying jobs don't actually go to Guyanese, but go to people from other countries. Now, that would be very alarming and is something that we as a country must make every effort to train Guyanese in order for them to be able to benefit from these opportunities. I think that again, I think there's a real misunderstanding of the problem and misunderstanding of the scale of what needs to be done. Because, as an example, you know that more than half of Guyanese didn't pass maths and English, right? So, first of all, you have thousands and thousands of people that drop out of high school before they get to CXC. And second
Hmm.
of all, the pass rates for, I think, probably the entire time that the PUP was in office for math and English were not really above 50%. Certainly, I don't think more than one or 2 years. So as a result, you've got a huge segment of the population that doesn't have that basic qualification, and a large segment, if you carry it further, of the population that is not fully literate, has difficulty reading and writing, and so on. And there has been, in the face of this, no comprehensive effort, no mention by the government of the fact that we have a huge unskilled labor force in this country, and that there's a lot that needs to be done to clean up the poor circumstances that many people found themselves in growing up under the PUP and going through that school system. There's not been any mention of that. Even as it stands, Guyana spends under the regional average when it comes to education spending. We spend less than the regional
Hmm.
average.
Hmm.
Under the coalition, we had gotten closer to the regional average of budget, but we're still spending way less than the regional average when it comes to education, or we've historically been doing that. That has meant then that you have hundreds of thousands of people that are either not literate or don't have a high degree of qualification. And that is coupled with an extremely low rate of people who have university education. Of course, a lot of people would have migrated and so on.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you've got a big population that is not skilled. You have an industry that requires skills and where a lot of jobs connected to it will be created. And there's this big mismatch. So what may happen is that skilled folks from abroad may come and fill all these posts, and the unskilled Guyanese be left basically with the lower end, lower paying jobs.
Hmm.
That is not acceptable. And I believe that the government's refusal to acknowledge that very substantial training and retraining programs need to be undertaken is a cardinal sin, and it is something that we will address aggressively as a coalition.
Very well. I hear you talk about persons being skilled, and I saw something, and we discussed it here in our program during the course of the week, that seems to be very ironic. We know there are a lot of persons who, I think they put a figure somewhere around 10 to 11,000 persons who have been given these part-time jobs. That in and of itself got a host of problems with it. But let's take that as a given. There are 11,000 people who have been employed. One of the concern is, like you say, a lot of those folks are unskilled. But then we saw
Yeah.
something curious this very week, where the installed minister of labor is saying that they're getting ready to train Venezuelan migrants to take up jobs locally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw that, and I was kind of caught off guard. I'm
Well,
like,
it's two of
oh,
us.
wow.
Yep, yep,
Yeah,
yep.
we living in strange times, as they say.
Wow. The Twilight Zone.
Listen,
Talk to us about
Jared,
that.
I'd put it to you. I put it to you this way:
Mhm.
it is extremely obvious that instead of employing these 10,000 people for 10 days with a $40,000, that what you should do is to train these people, put them in a training program, and give them a stipend of 40,000.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
That is transparent. And
Mhm.
and just to indicate, when we are in extensive training programs with those types of stipends. So listen, that is I don't like to call people stupid, but that was a stupid policy, and we will capitalize upon their stupidity. Okay, every
Very
last
well.
person who is to be trained will receive a student stipend and will be put in training programs to help them to build skills so they can get high paying jobs in the oil and gas industry. We are not here to offer people a part-time 40,000 in the hope that can get them for vote for us. We want people to succeed. They'll be able to keep the 40,000, but we're going to be focused on training. We'll be focused on training. Broke thinking like that got a left behind. We are
Mhm.
not going in
Mhm.
that direction.
Mhm.
And we're looking
Mhm.
for a bright future for Guyanese, not to have them dependent on something that barely can help you when the month comes.
Yep, yep, yep. Folks, before we switch the discussion up a little bit and talk about some other issues, I want to encourage you to share the live wherever you're joining us from. And I know some of you come, you get locked into the discussion, you get locked into the comments and so forth, and you forget the rest of the program to engage and share the live and smash that emoji button for us, drive up the algorithm. And so, folks, all over the place gets valid, credible information. This is not the kind of stuff you're going to read in Chronicle and NCN and DPI and so on. They don't like truth, they like propaganda. But we folks, credible, valid information all the time. Elson, you're looking at the job market here, and a lot of young people looking for work and that kind of stuff. What would you
Yeah.
say to those young people you should be doing now? I know you mentioned part of it just now, to capitalize on what is happening locally. I say the money belongs to all Guyanese. I don't care who in government and people. The rising tide must float all boats. People must be able to work and live in their own country and not be victimized in all those other things. So what should young people and people in general be doing now to be part of what is happening?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think that young people need to focus on upskilling, gaining whatever skills and training they can, do some research, see what is available. I know that the University of Guyana has some programs there. I know that there are various oil and gas companies that do training. I know that some of the shore bases will provide you with training once you're employed there. So I would look as much as possible to increase skills. But I think also, on a very basic level, I think people who may not have been able to pass the master the English at CXC, who may not have been able to accomplish the grades they need to get into the University of Guyana, I think you should look to go to the TVET schools, whether it's GTI, whether it's Linden Technical Institute, and these types of schools to increase your skill base. And if you want to go to University of Guyana, you can subsequently go after having attended those schools. But the point being that we don't want a situation where Guyanese are left behind as much as foreigners are coming in and as the minister indicated, being trained. We don't want that to happen. We want to ensure Guyanese are able to get the high paying jobs. Now, a lot of jobs that will be created will be lower paying jobs. I mean, somebody's got to do that work. We understand that, but as much as possible, the benefits, the economic benefits, should accrue to Guyanese who have every right to the benefits of their own homeland. So that I think is the way that it must be approached. What I would also say to Guyanese, young Guyanese, but Guyanese more broadly, is look at the ways the oil and gas sector is changing the economy, changing the country, and try and position yourself to benefit from those changes as much as possible, whether that's in the real estate market, whether that's in services that might be required by those connected to the oil and gas industry, all of that. I'll give you a simple example. Not that I'm telling anyone to go into the air conditioning business,
Talk to us.
but
It's hot outside
uh,
today, Elson. It's
yeah.
hot outside today. Go right ahead.
Yeah, it's incredibly hot, number one. But number two, as we see a lot of foreign folks come in, recall that these folks are accustomed to different living situations, so they're going to want AC, right? So that's a simple change to the economy that may fly under the radar, but I think will have a substantial impact. We know that GPL has indicated that AC is one of the reasons that the power consumption in the country is going up. You see? Now, if that
Hmm.
is the case, then it seems obvious to me that maybe people will be purchasing more ACs, have been purchasing more ACs, that is going to be a trend. So that's just one tidbit to give people a sense of changing trends, changing tastes, and a changing economy. So if
Uh-huh.
you can position yourself, I think that you'll be able to benefit from these changes rather than be left behind. That's on an individual level. But on a government and a national level, we need to see a lot more because, ultimately, most of the gains are concentrated in the government coffers because of their take of our revenues. And therefore, a lot of the burden has to fall on the government to try and make use of those finances to make people's lives better and to grow the economy.
Indeed, indeed. Elson, we got this thing that's following us called inflation. It's like a curse word now. Inflation, inflation, inflation. Again, I don't want to assume that all of our listeners understand it fully, even though it's going to impact their lives in one way or the other. Talk to us a little bit about what it is, and how it is driving up costs in the market there. And then I want to segue from that into a little clip from an interview yesterday and ask you for your take on it, because some things that are being done locally is driving up inflation, and people don't seem too concerned about it. It's almost tantamount to criminal negligence. What is happening? The fact that it impacts lives in such a meaningful way. You got this money in your pocket, but you're doing less and all of that. So talk to us about what inflation is, and then we're gonna pick it back on the other end.
Yeah, so inflation really is just the increase in the prices of goods. Even though it's the same good, you have an increase in the price, and that obviously means that you can purchase less of the good. There's also something on the other end which I want to point out that's not talked about, but which people may be experiencing, which is called shrinkflation.
Yeah.
That's where the price remains the same, but the portion you get is smaller. I believe that people were pointing out that with okra, the bundles of okra were being reduced in size rather than the price going up. So those are the types of really kitchen table everyday issues that you come across when you've got rising prices, when you've got inflation, and so that's what's been going on. Sadly, in Guyana, part of it is due to the war in Ukraine, which has caused prices to spike. Another part is due to the rise in oil prices, which has caused similarly prices to go up. But we should also remind our viewers that Guyana is benefiting hugely from this spike in oil prices. And so, as a result of that, it is no excuse that the government can say, oh, it's happening everywhere. And there's nothing that can be done about it. There are things that can be done, number one. And number two, we are making far more money than we expected to make. And as a result of making much more money than we expected to make, that means there's more capacity to help.
Yep.
But, these
Yep.
folks, like I said, they made a conscious decision not to help.
Yep. 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 And they say another thing that can drive up these prices, Elson, is the amount of money that's being pumped in the economy. That like you
Yes,
say, the
well, what
capacity
has
is not there.
what has happened is that the economy, the national budget usually expands by 10 to 15% year over year.
Hmm.
Okay. But they have expanded the national budget between last year and this year by just roughly 50-55% if you include the supplemental budget. That has, of course, shocked the local environment because it is not accustomed to such a large increase
Mm-hmm.
so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not to say that we should not be spending money. We need to spend money. We need to grow the economy. But rather that the proportions and the priorities have not been appropriate. And so you have the largest budget ever in the country's history. That this is the first part of it, the main budget that was passed, which was for almost 50% bigger than the previous year's budget, 552, $53 billion.
Uh-huh.
But in that, you know how much was for cost of living relief? I don't know if you recall how much was for it, but it
Five
was
billion.
less than a percent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 5 billion,
Five
less
billion
than a
dollars. Yeah.
percent. So you have this massive increase, this huge budget, and you put almost nothing towards cost of living mitigation.
Mm-hmm.
What in the world? And so as a result of that, you've got lots of money pumped into the economy and prices going up because of the money that's been pumped in. But you don't have the adequate measures to deal with the effects of increasing the budget so quickly. That is one of the reasons that you're seeing this inflation, and it is very sad that that's what's going on.
Yep, yep, yep. Very sad indeed. So there was an interview yesterday with Vice President installed Mr. Jack Deo and a fellow they call the Bird Nest. They call him the Bird Nest. There was an interview yesterday, and he and Jack Deo was talking about what it's doing in the economy and the fact that it could affect inflation. It could impact on inflation. But he seemed too worried because it's quite strange. People are hurting in this economy, but there's such a flippancy as it concerns to the kind of pains people are experiencing. Here is that excerpt, and I want to get your take on the other side, economist Elson Lowe.
You will see that in the
From the
you
top.
will see that
Again.
in the public sector investment program. You will see the highways, you will see the bridges, you will see the power plants, not frills, not fancy things. You will see that in the public sector investment program. You will see the highways, you will see the bridges, you will see the power plants, not frills, not fancy things. And then you will see water, housing, the important things to people, and so education. So it's an aggressive program, and it could be a bit inflationary too, but that is why we're taking strong mitigating steps to ensure that we limit it.
Mm-hmm. Economist Lowe, what are your
Yeah, well,
thoughts?
you can say they're taking strong mitigating steps, but he has to actually have
Strong mitigating steps.
steps. You know? Listen, I give you an example of something that he threw out as something that's not possible. We talked about a way that we could bring down and keep down the price of gas based off of compensating suppliers for
Mm-hmm.
any amount over a determined level. We talked about vouchers for minibuses and for canters and so on that are bringing produce to market so that they could be able to fill up at a much lower rate. That would have immediately dropped the cost of food, immediately could drop the cost of food, immediately drop the cost of transportation for children and for families and so on. But those are things that they don't want to listen to. If you want to target, if you want to target the costs of basic things that people have to consume every day, like food, you have to be serious about it. They have talked about the provision of fertilizer and so on and so forth,
Uh-huh.
right? But the first thing is that fertilizer is taken some time to even be handed out. I think only in certain areas it has even started to be handed out. And the second is, even if you're giving fertilizer, it's going to take some time for crops and so on to be planted and whatnot. So this is going to take a bit of time to actually impact the economy. The next thing they talked about in terms of bringing down the price of flour was they're going to plant wheat locally. That's what he talked about. They're gonna plant all the way in, I think, eight or something like that. Plant wheat. Now, first of all, apart from being, a really hilarious, attempt to do something which is totally unnecessary,
Mm-hmm.
you have to ask yourself: do they not understand that a wheat crop will probably only be ready all the way in next year, right? We were talking about them planting wheat all the way back in March, I believe, or when the Ukraine war kicked in, and it's a whole year Guyanese would have to wait to get any kind of proper wheat supply. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't know that we're going to get enough wheat to supply the entire market with flour. I don't know that there's proper plans in place to do that. I don't know that the transportation costs from all the way in Region 8 to the coast will be low enough that the wheat will actually be at a reasonable price, a lower price than the world market price. So it's these types of absurd solutions that are incredibly lagged, that are only going to impact maybe next year or the following year, that they've been pursuing. And when they pursue them, they're so small in scale, less than 1% of the budget, that they have basically no impact. That's why you have not seen any substantial drop in food prices over the course of the year. There's been a little bit of a drop in the last month or so, but nothing substantial. Whereas the vast majority of the year has been a punishing
Yeah.
inflation story,
Yeah.
absolutely punishing. If they had
Yeah.
implemented what we talked about in terms of bringing down the cost of fuel for those transporting goods, transporting food, and so on, that could have immediately lowered the cost of food. That would have immediately lowered the cost of food. In fact, it would have brought it back down to similar prices to what it was late in the year last year,
Yeah.
even though those are still pretty elevated
Yeah.
prices. That would have helped massively. But that's something that is between today and tomorrow. You can do, all you do is roll out a voucher program, you register some people, and you're good to go. But they're interested in talking about and having show. And I mean, who in goodness name thought that growing wheat in Guyana was a good solution to the flour crisis is beyond me.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
Maybe
another thing.
long
Yeah.
term, but not for the current crisis.
There's another thing that we saw in the media during the course of the week. They say in terms of bringing down some of the prices locally, they're importing tomatoes from Brazil or Suriname, one of those places. And I'm thinking, I don't think tomatoes is a staple. I don't think people saying I can't live without my tomatoes. I cooking, but I can't cook without my tomatoes.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing, and but the other question is, is it something that we can grow here? I believe that we can grow tomatoes, unless I'm misinformed. And if that's the case, why aren't we expanding production by farmers here?
Hmm.
One of the things that we as the opposition would have indicated from early on is that they should provide grants to farmers to buy equipment and to therefore expand their production, because if you can produce more at a cheaper rate, you can if you can produce more, you can typically benefit from economies of scale. That is to say that you can produce at a cheaper cost. Producing at a cheaper cost means that you can now charge a lower price for these goods. But that's not the approach that we've really seen them take. And as a result of that, I don't think that you've seen agricultural production increase
Hmm.
enough to
Hmm.
offset or
Hmm.
to push down these prices.
Hmm.
It's not just, I mean, yes, on the one hand, you want to give out cash relief, but you also want to increase the productive capacity of the economy, so that we can meet the increased cash that's flowing through it. Now, obviously, if you're not serious about inflation, if you just feel people just gotta punish and hold on, if that's your attitude to it, which I believe is the attitude the government has taken throughout, then you're not going to really make serious efforts in this regard. And I think putting almost no money towards it is the first red flag, and the second red flag is when you have a supplemental budget, so you now have an opportunity to address the effects of the war in Ukraine, you make no meaningful attempts to do anything. So I don't know if there's more evidence required to show how little they care about the most basic, important kitchen table issue, which is the cost of food and to the average person.
Well, that is some of the challenges that we are engaging, and I cannot say it in any way in any better way that demonstrates the grave nature that people are suffering in this country. We heard quite recently a young woman come out and almost begging Irfan Ali to increase public servants' wages and salaries. I mean, literally begging and saying people are hurting. I mean, if you don't believe us on this side of the aisle, at least believe the people out there who are feeling the brunt of the policies of the administration. You mightn't think it is much, but at least if the people take to social media and say, you know, Mr. President, we're hurting out here. Come on, send some little crumbs down. I mean, come on, folks, come on. I think we're gonna line up that video in just a second. But you know, Elson, you know,
Yeah,
people
yeah.
hurting here,
Well,
boy.
like I said, the deep irony of this thing is that it is not that the government doesn't have money, isn't, that the country isn't making money. It's that they've just decided not to help people, because we anticipated, this is in the World Bank and so on, anticipated around about a $75 a barrel average price over the course of 2022.
Hmm.
But the oil price is consistently being above or around $100 a barrel, reaching as high as I think $139 a barrel at one point. So very high amounts, very high levels, but that excess has not been put towards any cost of living mitigation measures. It is as if they don't even care. They ignore the fact that the Ukraine war has had a big impact. What we were saying when it comes to the efforts to bring down the cost of gas locally and to give vouchers and so on to those transporting food to market, what we were essentially saying is the
Hmm.
surplus that the government is getting is so much that it can easily fund these types of programs. If you expect a $75 a barrel oil price and you got $100 a barrel oil price, that is a third more. That is already a 30% there of additional revenue. And it's not something you anticipated. No one really expected there to be a prolonged war in Ukraine when the original budget was passed. But rather than take that excess benefit and try and use it to bring down the cost of living, they just decided to ignore the problem and pretend like nothing is happening while people are punishing. It is wholly unacceptable that in a country that is prospering, people across the population are being forced to punish. It's crazy. It speaks to poor governance, and it speaks to the real inequality that we're seeing start to play out in the society. Because of course you'll recall that there are people connected to the oil and gas industry
Yeah,
that are
yeah,
making lots of money, that
correct.
are doing well. The private sector commission said rents around Georgetown in some areas tripled. Rents in many areas have gone up. Even someone was complaining to me, even for a not particularly good apartment, you have to pay an absurd amount. That is what is going on. And I think if you don't, as a government, you're not conscious of the real difficulties your people are facing and how you are benefiting at the same time, then you won't match the two things together and produce good policy. Rather, you'll ignore the problem. There are, of course, to be fair, some housing initiatives that are going on, but they distress me because all you're seeing is 100 houses there, 100 houses there, 100 houses there, and I'm thinking to myself, you understand the scale of the issue? Every time an oil and gas worker moves into Guyana, he displaces 3 to 4 people because he wants his own house, and it's got to be in a good area and so on. So that entire family has got to move out of that house. Now, what that means is that you now have to house these 3 to 4 people. So that means that you need a significant and swift expansion in the total amount of housing in the country.
Yeah,
And you're talking
yeah.
about tens of thousands of people. We believe that over the course of the next 10 years or so, as the economy really heats up, the minimum that will be required from the oil and gas workers by itself is an additional 90,000 homes. That's just from the oil and gas industry.
Hmm.
But there's going to be all these other people moving to the country to fill jobs and so on. So I think what they're doing is way less than it needs to be, even as much as they're making some efforts. The efforts are totally disproportionate to the problem, which is why rents have remained so high.
Exactly. So here's one of those persons who this cost of living hitting a public servant, and she took to social media, I believe it was TikTok, during the course of the week to let her concerns be made known in a message to the president.
This is a message to the President. Mr. President, the people in the public sector.
Do we have that?
This is a message to the
I'm not
president.
hearing.
Mr. President, the people in the public sector are struggling. Mr. President, the people in the public sector are struggling. The only meal that some people will be giving their children tonight is a kiss on the forehead to tell them good night. Mr. President, the people in the public sector are struggling. If we are a part of the One Guyana initiative, you need to show us that we are struggling day in and day out. We go to work just doing what we need to do to survive. But it is unfair for us to be the backbone of this economy and we're not even being shown that appreciation. The nurses are struggling, the teachers are struggling, the ministries are struggling, the agencies are struggling. I'm not asking you to give handouts, but I'm asking you to show appreciation for the people in the public sector.
That's yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the million-dollar question really is what is public servant raise going to be like at the end of the year? That's what everybody's anxious about because these folks have not raised it substantially over the course of their time in office. Even as much as cost of living has gone up, they've not raised public servant salaries by anything substantial. I believe, in fact, it hasn't even caught up with the inflation. It has even it's a little bit less than the total inflation. So that's one real area of concern. But what we had also indicated, as an opposition, is that we need to see public servants get a 10% now to help them to deal with a lot of these cost of living woes. And then at the end of the year, you can sort out any remaining increases. We obviously, when we were in office, we gave very substantial increases. I believe, especially on the lower end, I think it was as much as a 75% increase over the course of our 5 years.
Correct.
Uh, yeah,
Every year, public servants got increased. Every year.
exactly. Very substantial increases. Whereas these guys are fiddling about with a 7% over the course of 2 years, which is, the first year was nothing. And then after that was barely a 7%, but the inflation rate that year was nearly 7%. So between the 2 years, it didn't keep pace with the inflation rate. Public servants are essentially worse off than they were when they were under us. They're making less. The dollar is counting for less. So that's the approach they've taken when it comes to the public service, and it's totally unacceptable. And again, we're saying you can give public servants a 10% now, and then at the end of the year, give them an additional amount. But if these folks give them, anything at the end of the year, I guess it'll be a little bit surprising, won't it?
Indeed. It'll be very surprising. And I think nobody's holding their breath now for next year's budget. As you get more oil fines and so on, people just sucking the teeth because it's not coming to affect their lives in any meaningful way. As we wrap up the program today, Elson, economist Elson Lowe, what do you tell Guyanese people about their future? I mean, is there anything to look forward to under these boys?
Yeah, well, what I would say is the public at large, needs to keep the pressure on the government and raise the pressure on the government to put resources towards fighting inequality in the society, getting wages up, helping with cost of living issues, helping with kitchen table issues, so that everyone is able to benefit from the tremendous gains in the economy. We cannot allow Guyana to become a society which is entirely of haves and have nots.
Correct.
We cannot allow inequality to dominate the national narrative. And I'd point out to your listeners that the PVP has not indicated that one of their development priorities is combating inequality. That's not going to fly with us. That is not going to fly. We believe that inequality is a serious issue. We believe that it is growing at a tremendous rate. If you look at the stock market, it's gone up 5 times over. But do poor people own any stock? No, they don't. So people are 5 times richer, whereas poor people are really without any gain in their overall net worth, in their overall wealth. We look at housing in high end areas, tripled. If you don't have a house, again, an increase in inequality, a sharp increase in inequality. We cannot allow this to be the society that we're living in. We
Correct.
cannot allow all the benefits to only go to a small few. We cannot allow a government to ignore these problems, because
Correct. Correct.
ultimately a huge amount of the resources is going to the government. They are the ones who are getting the direct benefit when it comes to the actual oil and gas cash. And so there's a great burden on them to find ways to both grow the economy and to ensure that inequality does not get out of hand. That is what I would say that people must have their eyes on, and where they must apply pressure.
Economist Elson, I really want to thank you for coming by today and putting these issues into context for us. Thank you so much, sir.
No problem at all, and thank you for having me.
Have a great weekend. Thanks for coming by again.
You too. Bye.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for us at this end. Good to have had so many of you on the broadcast today. Good to have had so many of you, Carol Forbes and Naomi Drucker and Basil Clark and Gwyneth Anderson. Good to have had you guys today. Each and every one of you, share the live, smash that emoji button, partner with us so we can keep doing what we do here, folks, and have a great, great weekend. Gwyneth, divine votes indeed. Basil, that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. Basil, that's what they're doing. Naomi, sad situation indeed. Carol Rollins, stay safe, and thanks for your well wishes as well. And all the other folks who joined us today. That's going to do it for us at this end. Pace and power, valid, credible information. Stay safe, guys. Stay safe.